The sledgehammer came down with a satisfying crack against the concrete. Marcus wiped the sweat from his brow, surveying the demolished pool that had consumed 3 years of his weekends. He never expected Karen from next door to be dialing 911, screaming about property destruction and neighborhood vandalism. What he definitely didn't expect was discovering the real reason why she was so desperate to keep that pool intact, and the dark secret buried beneath it that would change. Marcus Chen hefted the sledgehammer over his shoulder, admiring his handiwork. Where his backyard pool had stood for the past decade, now lay a satisfying pile of broken concrete and twisted rebar. 3 days of demolition had finally freed him from the money pit that had drained his savings and consumed every weekend with maintenance. "Thank God that's over," he muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his work glove. The August heat was brutal, but the sense of liberation made it bearable. No more chlorine burns on his hands, no more $200 monthly chemical bills. No more lying awake at night worrying about neighborhood kids sneaking in for a midnight swim and drowning on his property. His phone buzzed. Sarah's name lit up the screen. "How's the destruction going?" His wife's voice carried a mixture of amusement and relief. "Finished. The concrete guy comes Monday to haul away the debris." Marcus surveyed the crater that would soon become the garden Sarah had dreamed about for years. "I can already picture your tomatoes growing where that deep end used to be. I can't wait to see it." The girls are going to miss the pool, but a sharp rap on his front door cut through their conversation. "Hold on, honey. Someone's at the door." Marcus set down the sledgehammer and walked through his house, still in his demolition clothes. Through the peephole, he saw 2 uniformed police officers standing on his porch, their expressions serious. His stomach dropped. "Sarah, I'll call you back." He opened the door, immediately noticing how the younger officer's hand rested casually near his service weapon. "Good afternoon, sir. Are you Marcus Chen?" "Yes, that's me. Is everything okay?" The older officer, whose name tag read Martinez, stepped forward. "We received a report of property vandalism at this address. Someone called 911 claiming you were destroying property that doesn't belong to you." Marcus blinked, certain he'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what? This is my house. I was demolishing my own pool." "Can you prove ownership of the property?" The absurdity of the situation hit him like a slap. "Prove ownership? Officer, I've lived here for 8 years. I can show you my deed, mortgage statements, property tax bills, whatever you need." Through his peripheral vision, Marcus caught movement at the fence line. Karen Whitfield stood in her backyard, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with unmistakable satisfaction. Her perfectly manicured lawn and pristine pool sparkled in, the afternoon sun a stark contrast to the construction zone his yard had become. "Ma'am," Officer Martinez called out, noticing her as well. "Are you the one who called this in?" Karen approached the fence with the confidence of someone who'd never been wrong about anything in her life. At 50-something, she maintained the appearance of a woman who spent considerable time and money fighting the aging process. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and her designer workout clothes looked like they'd never seen actual exercise. "Yes, I did. That man has been destroying property for 3 days straight. The noise has been unbearable, and I'm concerned about what he's doing over there." Marcus felt his blood pressure rising. "Karen, it's my pool. On my property. Which you know perfectly well. I don't know anything of the sort." Her voice carried the sharp edge of someone accustomed to getting her way. "All I know is you've been making a tremendous racket and destroying what appears to be a perfectly good swimming pool." The younger officer, Thompson, according to his badge, looked between them with the weary expression of someone who'd mediated too many neighbor disputes. "Sir, if you could just show us some documentation proving ownership, we can clear this up quickly." "Of course." Marcus gestured for them to follow him inside, but Karen's voice stopped him. "Officers, I hope you're planning to cite him for disturbing the peace at minimum. I've been documenting the noise violations for 3 days." Marcus turned, back to face her. "Documenting? Karen, I started work at 9 a.m. each morning and stopped by 5 p.m. I was well within the city's noise ordinances." "That's not the point. This is a quiet, family neighborhood. People don't just go around destroying their property willy-nilly." "Why do you care so much about my pool?" The question came out sharper than Marcus intended, but something about Karen's intensity bothered him. In 8 years of living next door to her, she'd never shown interest in anything happening on his property, beyond complaining about his grass being half an inch too tall. Karen's face flushed. I care about property values. I care about maintaining the character of this neighborhood. When people start tearing down amenities like swimming pools, it affects everyone. Officer Martinez held up a hand. Let's just see those ownership documents. Mr. Chen. Marcus led them inside, pulling out his deed from the file cabinet in his home office. As the officers examined the paperwork, he found himself studying Karen through the window. She remained by the fence, phone in hand, typing furiously. Everything appears to be in order, Martinez announced, handing back the documents. Mr. Chen, you're within your rights to modify your own property, assuming you have the proper permits. I do. The city inspector signed off on the demolition last week. Thompson nodded. We'll need to see those as well, just to complete our report. As Marcus retrieved the permits, he heard Karen's voice rising outside. She was on the phone, and her words carried clearly through the open windows. This is completely unacceptable. I don't care what those officers say. Something needs to be done about this situation immediately. When Marcus returned with the permits, Officer Martinez was shaking his head. Ma'am, we verified that Mr. Chen owns the property and has all the proper permits. There's no violation here. Then I want to speak to your supervisor. You're welcome to file a complaint, but that won't change the facts. Mr. Chen has every right to remove his own pool. Karen's composure cracked slightly. You don't understand. That pool, it can't be destroyed. There are reasons. The officers exchanged glances. Marcus felt a chill despite the heat. What reasons? Martinez asked. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time since Marcus had known her, she seemed genuinely flustered. It's a matter of neighborhood preservation. These pools are part of the community's character. Ma'am, Mr. Chen's property modifications don't require neighborhood approval. After the officers left, Marcus stood in his backyard, staring at the demolished pool with new eyes. Karen's reaction had been far too intense for a simple noise complaint or property value concern. Her panic when talking about the pool being destroyed felt personal, desperate even. His phone rang. Sarah again. What happened? You sounded strange. When you hung up. Marcus filled her in on the police visit while walking the perimeter of the destroyed pool. The whole thing was bizarre, Sarah. Karen acted like I was committing some kind of crime. Well, you know how she is about the neighborhood association rules. Remember when she tried to get the Johnsons cited for their basketball hoop? This was different. Marcus kicked at a chunk of concrete. She seemed genuinely upset about the pool specifically, not just the noise or the mess. Maybe she was planning to ask if she could use it. You know, her pool is always full of chemicals. She might have wanted a more natural swimming option. Marcus considered this, but it didn't feel right. I don't think so. She said something strange to the officers about the pool not being able to be destroyed. Like there were specific reasons it needed to stay intact. That is weird. What could she possibly... Marcus! Karen's voice cut across the yard. She stood at the fence, but her earlier aggression had been replaced with something that looked almost like pleading. I need to talk to you. I'll call you back, he told Sarah. He approached the fence cautiously. Karen's face was pale, and she kept glancing toward the pile of demolished concrete. Look, I'm sorry about calling the police. I may have overreacted. Marcus raised an eyebrow. In 8 years, he'd never heard Karen apologize for anything. But I need to ask you something important. What are you planning to do with all that concrete and debris? A crew is coming Monday to haul it away. Why? Karen's hands gripped the fence so tightly her knuckles went white. Where are they taking it? To a recycling facility, I assume? Karen, what's this about? She stared at the broken concrete for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. I'll pay you to keep it. Marcus blinked. What? The concrete. The debris. I'll pay you to keep it right here. Just pile it up somewhere on your property. Name your price. Karen, that makes no sense. Why would you want me to keep construction debris in my backyard? It's complicated. but I'm serious about paying. $5,000. The number hung in the air between them. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. $5,000 to keep a pile of broken concrete? Karen, what aren't you telling me? She looked around nervously as if checking for surveillance. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. Some things are better left buried. Part 2. Marcus waited until Karen's kitchen light went out before returning to the broken concrete with his crowbar. The metal tool felt cold against his sweaty palms as he worked to widen the cavity he'd discovered. Each scrape of metal against concrete seemed to echo through the quiet neighborhood. The hollow space was larger than he'd initially thought, roughly the size of a shoebox. As chunks of concrete fell away, his flashlight beam revealed something wrapped in what looked like heavy plastic sheeting, sealed with duct tape that had somehow remained intact despite years of moisture and pressure. His hands trembled as he pulled the package from its concrete tomb. It was heavier than expected, and there was an odd rigidity to whatever lay inside the plastic. Marcus set it on his patio table under the dim glow of his back porch light, staring at it as if it might explode. The rational part of his mind screamed to call the police immediately, but another part, the part that had spent 8 years dealing with Karen's controlling behavior and entitled attitude, wanted answers first. He found a utility knife in his tool shed and carefully cut through the duct tape. The plastic sheeting peeled away like the layers of an onion, revealing another layer. Underneath, then another. Karen had been thorough in her wrapping. When the final layer fell away, Marcus stumbled backward, nearly knocking over his patio chair. A human skull stared back at him from the table, its empty sockets seeming to accuse him in the dim light. Fragments of other bones were wrapped alongside it, what looked like pieces of ribs, parts of arms, sections of a spine. Not a complete skeleton, but enough to make Marcus's stomach lurch. His phone was in his hand before he consciously decided to call anyone. But instead of 911, he found himself dialing his brother David, a criminal defense attorney who'd gotten him out of more scrapes than he cared to remember. Marcus? It's almost midnight. David, I need you to come over, now, and don't ask questions over the phone. 20 minutes later, David Chen stood in Marcus's backyard, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled from being dragged out of bed. At 45, he was 3 years older than Marcus, but looked younger. His dress contained in expensive suits and careful diet rather than showing on his face. Jesus Christ, Marcus. David stared at the bones laid out on the patio table. Please, tell me you didn't kill someone. Of course I didn't kill anyone. I found these in the concrete when I demolished my pool. David pulled out his own flashlight, examining the remains more carefully. These have been here a long time. Look at the condition. Completely clean, no soft tissue. We're talking years, maybe decades. The concrete was poured when the pool was built 12 years ago. I have the construction records. So whoever this was died before then. David straightened up, his lawyer instincts taking over. The question is, did you know about this when you bought the house? Of course not. David, I've been swimming in that pool for 8 years. My daughters learned to swim in there. The thought made Marcus nauseous. If I'd known there was a body buried underneath. Calm down. We need to think this through logically. David began pacing, a habit Marcus remembered from their childhood. Who owned the house before you? The Hendersons. Elderly couple, moved to Florida. They seemed normal. Brought us cookies when we moved in. Sent Christmas cards for a few years. What about before them? Marcus tried to remember the property disclosure documents from his purchase. I think a single woman. I remember because our realtor mentioned she'd lived there for decades before selling to the Hendersons. David nodded slowly. We need to find out who that was. But first, we need to decide what to do about this. He gestured toward the remains. What do you mean, decide? We call the police. Marcus, think about what happens next. The moment we call this in, your property becomes a crime scene. They'll tear apart your entire yard looking for more evidence. Your house could be sealed off for weeks while they investigate. Sarah and the girls are in Portland visiting her mother for another week. That's lucky, but it doesn't change the bigger picture. Once this becomes public, the media will descend. Suburban father discovers body in backyard pool. Your family will never have privacy again. Marcus sank into a patio chair, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. So, what are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything illegal, but we have options. We could quietly contact the cold case division, let them handle it discreetly. Or, David paused, studying his brother's face. We could find out what really happened first. Knowledge is power, Marcus. Right now, someone else knows the truth about these remains, and they're probably panicking. Karen, your neighbor? What makes you think? Marcus filled David in on Karen's bizarre behavior, her desperate offer to pay him to keep the concrete debris, her cryptic comment about secrets being better left buried. She knows something, Marcus concluded. Maybe she knows everything. David was quiet for a long moment, staring at the bones. If that's true, then calling the police right now might not be the smartest move. What do you mean? Think about it. If Karen is involved in this death, whether as a perpetrator or an accomplice, and she realizes you found the remains, what's her next move? She could destroy evidence, skip town, or... David's voice trailed off. Or what? Or decide that you're a threat that needs to be eliminated. The words hung in the night air like a physical presence. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he considered the implications. You think I'm in danger? I think we need more information before we make any moves. And I think we need to be very careful about how we get it. They carefully rewrapped the remains and secured them in Marcus's garage, hidden behind his workbench. David insisted on staying the night, setting up on the couch where he could watch both the front and back approaches to the house. Don't go anywhere alone tomorrow, he warned as they locked up, and don't let Karen know we found anything. Marcus barely slept, every small sound in the house making him jolt awake. When dawn finally broke, he found David in the kitchen, laptop open, surrounded by printouts and coffee cups. I've been doing some research, David announced without preamble. The woman who owned your house before the Hendersons was named Margaret Tolliver. She lived there for 38 years before selling in 2012. That's just 2 years before I bought it from the Hendersons. Right. Margaret was 74 when she sold, moved into assisted living. Here's where it gets interesting. She died 6 months later. Marcus poured himself coffee with shaking hands. Natural causes? Heart attack, according to the obituary. But Marcus, look at this. David turned his laptop screen around, showing a newspaper article dated 15 years earlier. Margaret Tolliver reported her adult son missing in 2010. James Tolliver, age 42, disappeared without a trace. Police investigated but never found any leads. The coffee cup slipped from Marcus's hands, shattering on the kitchen floor. You think those bones... I think we need to find out more about James Tolliver's disappearance, and I think we need to understand Karen's connection to all of this. As if summoned by her name, a sharp knock echoed from the front door. Marcus and David exchanged glances before approaching cautiously. Through the peephole, Marcus saw Karen standing on his porch, but she looked different, haggard, with dark circles under her eyes and clothes that appeared to have been slept in. Don't answer it, David whispered. But Karen had seen the movement at the door. Marcus, I know you're in there. We need to talk. It's about what you found last night. Marcus's blood ran cold. She knew. Somehow she knew exactly what he'd discovered. Please. Karen's voice carried through the door, and for the first time since he'd known her, she sounded genuinely afraid. There are things you don't understand. Things that could get us both killed if you're not careful. David grabbed Marcus's arm, shaking his head firmly. But Marcus found himself reaching for the deadbolt anyway. If she wanted to hurt me, she wouldn't come to the front door in broad daylight, he reasoned. Marcus, don't... But the door was already opening. Karen stepped inside quickly, glancing nervously over her shoulder as if checking for surveillance. Thank God, she breathed. I was up all night worrying you might have called the police already. How did you know what I found? Marcus demanded. Karen's laugh held no humor. Because I've been watching that concrete for 12 years, terrified that someday someone would break it open. When I saw you out there with the flashlight, then your brother showing up in the middle of the night, she shrugged. It wasn't hard to figure out. So, You admit you know about the remains. I know about a lot more than the remains. Karen's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I know who killed James Tolliver. I know why he was buried under your pool. And I know that if certain people find out he's been discovered, we're all dead. David stepped forward, his lawyer instincts taking over. Who are these certain people? Karen's eyes darted between the two brothers. You really want to know? You want to open that door and see what's behind it? Marcus nodded slowly, though every instinct screamed at him to say no. James Tolliver wasn't just some missing person, Karen began. He was a witness. 20 years ago, he saw something he shouldn't have seen. Someone very powerful wanted him silenced permanently, but James was smart. He had insurance, documents, photographs, recordings, evidence show.